Good podcasters know the value of good audio. And in this video, I'll give you 6 tips for better sound.
This is the place for podcasters.
Welcome back. My name's Brian here with Summit City Studios, and this is the place for podcasters. On this channel, we talk about tips, tools, and tech to help you create a great sounding podcast. And today I want to share 6 tips that will help you improve the quality of your sound. But before we get into that, let's talk about why this is so important. I'm maybe using a little bit of a metaphor here that might or might not make sense to you, but I believe your audio is the vehicle that carries your content. So if you viewed your content as valuable cargo, you would make sure that the van or truck that was transporting it was actually capable of getting it to its destination. So when it comes to podcasting, your audio is that vehicle. You see, your content could be revolutionary and something everybody needs, but if the audio quality is poor, it's inconsistent, or it's hard to listen to, people are going to quickly shut it down and your content won't be heard. Your cargo won't make it to its destination. So let's jump into these 6 tips for editing better audio so that doesn't happen. So right off the bat, let me hit you with one that's kind of an outlier because it's not technically an editing tip, but more of a recording tip that will greatly expedite and enhance your editing process. And that is that good audio starts with a good recording. There's a lot that plays into this, including the mic that you use, your mic technique, and even the space that you record in. I won't go too much into this here, but if you're interested, I do have a couple of videos dedicated to getting better audio right at the source, and I'll link that playlist at the end of this video for you to check out. If you're in the market for a good mic at a reasonable price, you might check out the gear links I have posted in the description of this video. It's all gear that I either currently use or I have used and would recommend for beginner podcasters or someone who's looking for maybe a budget upgrade to what you're currently using. So the second tip also starts in the recording process, but it can also be adjusted later in your editing and post-production process, and that is to monitor your audio. I can't tell you how important that is. To use a pair of headphones to listen and then keep an eye on the decibel meter on your recording device to ensure your audio isn't too quiet or too loud or there's something funny in the mix. Because if it's too quiet, you'll have to boost it too much in post, which will also bring up the ambient room noise in that mix, and you don't want that. And if it's too loud, you run the risk of clipping, which causes distortion and that annoying popping sound that is nearly impossible to remove. So a good rule of thumb is to adjust the levels so that your normal speaking voice sits right around the -12 decibel level, and it peaks somewhere between -6 and -3 decibels when your speech gets a little bit more impassioned or excitable. And you may or may not want to wear your headphones for the entirety of the recording, but you will at least want to check those levels at the beginning so that you don't get to the end and realize you have a really crappy recording. Let me pause here and just say that as much as I've done this, this is one that I have to continue to remind myself to do because as you see, I'm not wearing headphones now. I do check my levels ahead of time, and I put my headphones aside to record this content because sometimes it just looks funny with those headphones on recording a video, but I learned from experience. Actually, this is the second time recording this very video because what I listened to at the beginning didn't sound like the way it came out at the end, and I had a bit of an echo somewhere in my mix that I couldn't figure out right away. So I had to sit back down, re-record, and I'm trusting that these levels are fine and gonna end up just the way I checked them at the beginning. So let's jump back into tip number 3. Tip number 3 is to EQ your voice. Equalization or EQing allows you to adjust the volumes of the different frequencies in your recording. EQing your voice allows you to lower certain frequencies that might cause sibilance, that hard S that you may be hearing. You can brighten your voice for better clarity, and you can even drop the bass in your voice or bring up the bass in your voice with certain frequencies. But you also have the ability to drop the extremely low frequencies that can be caused by nearby appliances, passing traffic, or even the hum from equipment that you may have in your recording space. There's a lot of vocal EQ cheat sheets out there that will help you understand what frequencies to adjust to remove problems and achieve the sound you desire. So just head to Google, type in vocal EQ cheat sheet, and you'll find more than you know what to do with. That brings me to tip number 4. Compress your voice. Well, that sounds fancy, but what does it mean? Well, compression allows you to decrease the dynamic range of your mix, which means it decreases the loudest parts of the signal and increases the quietest parts. So if you're looking at the audio waveform, say in GarageBand or Audacity or Logic or whatever DAW you happen to be using, you'll see the really high peaks and really low valleys in that recording. Compression keeps those peaks and valleys, but essentially squeezes them together to decrease the distance between them, which helps to create a more consistent volume throughout the recording. Compressors can be tricky though, so slight modifications are best. If you don't use enough compression, it can lead to huge dynamic range in your mix, which can cause listeners to constantly have to be adjusting their volume so they can hear the quieter segments, but not blow their speakers when you start laughing. But too much compression, and you can begin to sound like a computer-generated voice that really no one wants to listen to. So take it easy on the compression. And that brings me to tip number 5. Once you've EQ'd your voice and dialed in the compression, save it as a preset. And you can do this in just about every DAW that's out there. With the mix you like saved as a preset, you don't have to spend a lot of time making the same adjustments each and every time you edit. You see, once you import your audio, you can click the preset that you want and get on with the chopping and the splicing and the fine-tuning of your mix. Now, there's one caution with this tip that I'll explain in just a moment, so stick around to the end so you don't make a silly and unnecessary mistake when you begin to apply presets. We'll get back to that in just a moment. But first, let's get to tip number 6, and that is to edit with headphones and test with speakers. Editing with a quality pair of headphones will help you hear what's actually in your mix and will help drown out all the other noises in your room, your house, or your studio, wherever you are recording. Using a pair of headphones, you'll be able to more likely hear the low rumbles in your recording too that might otherwise blend with the ambient noise around you. So using those headphones really helps you pick up the details of what's in there, and it'll actually help you dial in best those frequencies as you EQ and compress your voice. But you always want to test it on other speakers. So think about where you might listen to a podcast and test it there. Test it on your phone, through your earbuds, on your Alexa device, and maybe even in your car, because that's where your listeners will be as they take in your podcast. So you want to make sure it sounds good in those places and not just through your fancy, expensive headphones. Okay, so I promised you I'd get back to a caution related to saving your EQ and your compression settings as presets. And that caution comes actually wrapped in the context of a bonus tip. And here's the bonus tip. Find a mic that highlights the best in your particular voice. Not all mics are equal, and every mic is actually slightly different and picks up different frequencies better than others. And I understand that budgets can really restrict the specific mic that you're able to afford, but even in the budget mic category, you can find one that will accentuate the best in your voice better than all the rest. For me, there's 2 mics that I like using. This PreSonus PD70 is the one I typically use, but I also like the Rode PodMic. They both sit at about the same price point. They're both kind of budget XLR mics, but there's significant differences in the sounds that they produce. You see, the PodMic picks up higher frequencies better, which leads to more clarity in my voice, but the PD70 picks up the lower frequencies slightly better, which leads to a fuller, more robust sound. You see, I like them both, but I use them both for different projects and in different settings. Now, here's my caution with presets. If you find a mic that you like and dial in the settings the way that you want and save them as a preset, only use that preset for that particular mic. Because all mics are different, you can't use the same preset for every mic that's out there. You'll actually have to do the work for each mic that you want to use, but the good news is you can save a preset for each one. Now remember, if you're interested in getting better audio right at the source, there's a playlist at the end of this video you might want to check out. But for now though, I'd love it if you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Summit City Studios is a podcast editing and production service helping businesses, organizations, and individuals just like you create great sounding podcasts. If you're interested in what we have to offer, stop by our website at summitcitystudios.com.